Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today. Hey miners, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the market volatility we're witnessing this week as Bitcoin attempts to crack through the $100,000 sell wall. Now, we talked in our video yesterday about the fact that Anthony and I do not think the miners are fairly valued. We're not selling at this point, so the only other thing left to do is buy, and that's going to be the topic of today's discussion. So we're going to be talking about what we're buying, why we're buying, and when we bought during this period of volatility in today's video. Before we do, take a second, smash the like button, you guys. Big help to myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below how you're feeling about your portfolio this week, if you're making any trades, and when you think Bitcoin is going to crack through this $100,000 psychological barrier. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Well, Anthony, another Tuesday morning here. Bitcoin continuing to struggle to find a footing, now falling into the $93,400 range. Bitcoin miners were mixed this morning. Now it's a sea of red. We talk about volatility a lot on the channel. We're obviously seeing that this week in light of that $100,000 sell wall that we covered in yesterday's video. However, this volatility, if you've got the long-term fundamental outlook as we do in terms of our investment thesis, does present a great buying opportunity. And as the great Michael Saylor once said, Anthony, volatility is a feature of Bitcoin, not a flaw. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the volatility. We're going to be talking about why we think this is a great opportunity to load up, top up your positions, and where we think this ultimately is going to go in terms of the trade over the next 6 to 12 months. So a lot to get through. We've also got some news updates. Before we do, Tuesday morning, how are you feeling, Anthony?
Yeah, feeling okay. I mean, got to take things into context. So it actually dropped to 91,500 earlier today in European time. And, it's recovered a little bit from there. But if you think about where we are for the month, we're still 40% up on the month in Bitcoin. So when people start rushing and thinking it's all gone wrong, we're still massively higher than the all-time high achieved earlier this year. We've still got the inauguration of the president to happen, and we could have a little bit of a bumpy ride, as I say, over the next few weeks. We talked a lot about this yesterday, about people having sell orders in as we approach that magic six-figure number, the 100,000. And but at the same time, all the news is positive. I was listening to CNBC this morning, and I do scratch my head sometimes listening to those commentators on Squawk Box, and they indicate, they keep asking the questions if they're very newbies to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's been around for 14 years, and for the last 12 of those 14 years, they've been basically saying it's a scam. This last couple of years, they've actually turned around, but they still act when they interview people as if they don't know anything about Bitcoin, ask them to explain everything again, and they're not certain about everything. So they really need to book their ideas up and get on the train, because everyone on the train at the moment is doing really well with Bitcoin. There won't be many people in a loss position in Bitcoin, put it that way.
No, there certainly won't, especially as it approaches all-time highs, essentially meaning everyone is in the profit. It is interesting, though, and you bring up a good point, Anthony, talking about the adoption curve. Obviously, our community, our channel, our subscribers, even the people we interact with on Twitter, very Bitcoin focused. They're in the know, they're crypto type of people. But I thought about this yesterday, actually, at the gym. When you talk to the regular average citizen out there, the normie, they call them, a lot of times when I meet people, they'll say, "Oh, what do you do?" I say, "I'm a YouTuber." "Okay, great. What do you YouTube about?" "Bitcoin and finance." So many of them say, "Oh, Bitcoin, I just don't understand it." I was thinking probably 9 or 8 out of 10 people that I talk to just have no clue what Bitcoin is or how it works. So I think a lot of times it's easy for us to kind of get caught in this vacuum of everybody we know and talk about is all for Bitcoin. But in general, you think about 8 billion people in the world, 21 million coins. Even if everybody does know about it and is bought into it, there's just not enough to go around.
And let's be honest, it's a fraction of. We talk about companies investing in Bitcoin. We talk about ETFs. We talk about the public companies, the miners who were hodling Bitcoin. When you look at the companies in the US, we're talking a minute amount of those companies have actually got any form of blockchain on their balance sheet. Um, we've just highlighted the ones that are moving across, but there are thousands upon thousands of companies, and we've probably highlighted 4 or 5 of those thousands of thousands. So it's not like we're anywhere near the adoption that it potentially can have. Yes, some of the big ones have jumped in. So we've talked about the Black Rocks and the Fidelities, and they're taking a big position in this. BlackRock over 400,000 coins, 450,000 Bitcoin. That's a sizable amount of it's over 2% of the whole amount of Bitcoin that'll ever be produced. But you go down that list there. Yes, Tesla has some Bitcoin on the balance sheet. They've had it on there since 2021 when Elon Musk purchased it just to really see what it was all about, and then he sold a batch just to see if that worked as well. So, but you go down that list of all those top companies on the S&P and the Nasdaq. Very, very few have got any Bitcoin. Now, even if they were to turn around and say, let's just put 1% of Bitcoin on the balance sheet, just keep it small. Let's not put the house on Bitcoin. Where does that Bitcoin price go to then? Because there's just not enough Bitcoin out there. And we already talked yesterday. Michael Saylor bought 55,000 the weekend, or in the last week. You've got the ETFs have been buying it 34,000. So that's 90,000 Bitcoin in a week that's been purchased by the ETFs and Michael Saylor. That's a small fraction of businesses buying Bitcoin. That works out in my head at 200 days of production. We can't produce it quick enough for these to buy it. So, hold the line, keep your Bitcoin, don't start selling it. I'm not selling mine. And the price will sort itself out. I mean, but Bitcoin value at the moment, it's less than two trillion. To get some sort of reasonable asset base there, it needs to get to 8-10 trillion. We're not saying it's going to go to 100 trillion. Let's not try and kid ourselves. But actually, it's not unreasonable enough to think, $8-10 trillion asset class in the not too distant future, and that's probably 5 or 6 times where it is at the moment. So this is why a lot of these analysts have been saying, Bitcoin, over and Michael Saylor, the number one, bull in the market with regards to Bitcoin since he come on the train back in 2020. He's been saying 29% a year annualized growth, and no other asset class can come near to that. Well, he's got it right up to now, and there's no reason why it won't be right. I mean, he's not a stupid person. He's a very, very bright individual. And a lot of people have been following what he's doing there, and see the likes of Marathon Digital now picking up that same strategy. We've already had a couple of company names through our podcast of other companies, even smaller companies, picking up the Bitcoin on the balance sheet as well. So it looks like once we get some of the big companies put it on their balance sheet, even in small amounts, even if it was like 1%. If all pension funds had 1% of Bitcoin, it would just be enormous. It's it's not even. We're at the fractions of 1% at the moment, tiny fractions.
Yeah, it's so exciting to think about how early we are here, Anthony. And that's exactly what I meant with my prior point. Now, as you were talking there, I did some quick math. Apparently, 8.2 billion people in the world right now. So if you divide 21 million into 8.2 billion, you get about 1 Bitcoin for every 390 people on Earth, if my math is right, Anthony. So that tells you exactly how valuable that is just on a macro level. Now, moving on from there, you bring up some great points about these big players, Michael Saylor, Fred Thiel, buying Bitcoin and buying it in volume. So we've talked about the volatility. Obviously, it's frustrating. You open your account, you see the big negative for the day or the total balance has gone down. But realistically, and I used the joke in one of the former podcasts, you don't get mad if the price of gas goes down just because you filled up yesterday or the day before. Overall, this should be viewed as a positive thing. It's giving us more time to average into these positions, to accumulate money, to work, to get paid, and to funnel that money into either Bitcoin or the miners. And we've been doing exactly that over the past week, Anthony. So luckily, you and I both had some cash on the sideline. I'll let you speak for your personal purchases, but I know I've been moving money into pure play miners. I think that represents a great opportunity right now, especially the ones with the HODL, and into Bitcoin itself, as I feel we may look back at this period and say, man, this was the last time I could have got Bitcoin under $100,000 US. So personally, that's where I've been putting my money. And I think this volatility presents a great buying opportunity if you've got that same mindset. How are you managing this pullback, Anthony? And are you doing any buying on your side?
In recent weeks, I've added Mara, so Marathon Digital Holdings. I've added some shares of those last week. I managed to get in really good price. I think I got in at just over $18, $18.04. So I added to my current Mara stack. And it proved to be a real timely purchase because the share price then rallied all the way to $28. So, and I also purchased some IREN and some CleanSpark. So again, got my biggest stock at the moment is Core Scientific, and Core Scientific this year has rallied all the way this year. I've been in Core Scientific for quite a while. I bought Core Scientific last year, and obviously from my analysis and podcasts and articles, people will know that I've been bullish on Core Scientific. I really am in the fact that that HPC contract is a like a one in a lifetime deal, and hopefully we'll get other miners, maybe able to get something very similar. We've heard Huts talk about that, but Core Scientific have got a signed contract with a company that's private at the moment, but has already been talked about IPOing next year with a 35 billion valuation as we speak there, and they've got lots of funding all ready to grow the company. They're growing through with Core Scientific in North America. They're looking to even reach the United Kingdom. They've set aside $10 billion to invest in the United Kingdom. So they're not just staying in North America. So this is a real train. But Core Scientific, really good stock there. I didn't purchase any more of those this week because, as I say, my percentage of my portfolio has actually grown quite well with those in there. But Marathon was a really good purchase. And actually, if you think about that convertible note that Fred took out and purchased the Bitcoin, the market tended to like that, even though there were many people on social media thinking of the worst of the worst. So we'll talk about these days when the prices are yo-yoing a bit, and sometimes it gives you a real opportunity to buy into stocks that you wouldn't necessarily pick up. And if you remember going back to June when the Bitcoin price was 50,000, a lot of these mining stocks were higher priced then, and the Bitcoin price today is 93, 94. I think the miners have still got a run to do in the not too distant future, and when they do run, we know that the volatility of the mining stocks is far more bigger than Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin is volatile 3 to 5%, but the mining stocks can be volatile from anything like 15 to 20%. We've seen gains. We've seen some stocks. I remember IREN went up 50% in one day. So this is IREN, one of the biggest miners in the country, had a massive gain one day. And we've also seen the opposite reverse of that. We've seen mining stocks come down 20, 30% in a day. So there is that volatility. It is what people enjoy, because if you time it right, it can really pay dividends. But a lot of people timed it wrong in 2021, and hopefully they've learned from that and they're better placed during this cycle now, which I think is a different cycle from previous ones in terms of the ETFs have made it different, and the fact that there is some real impetus now from some of the bigger investment companies, bigger public companies starting to buy Bitcoin. And I say starting to buy Bitcoin. We're not nowhere near where we need to be, but I think we're in a better position now than we were 4 years ago.
I certainly do as well, Anthony. Bitcoin 4 years ago was essentially a concept at that point in time. Now it's become a true financial asset, and we talk about the importance of those ETFs providing that on ramp. Now, you brought up a few interesting points. You said the market is reacting very favorably to Marathon's essentially copycat move of MicroStrategy. What's interesting here, we actually did a video about MicroStrategy talking about that eventual timing or transition of funds out of MicroStrategy into the miners that we think may be starting to happen now. Since that video, MicroStrategy and MSTU have really sputtered. They've lost a lot of ground. However, Marathon actually attracted a lot of new capital with that move. So it's interesting to see now the miners that are adopting that MicroStrategy buying Bitcoin strategy are now actually favorable over MicroStrategy, at least in the short term here. Now, you also brought up market cap. So I think about CleanSpark, I think about Riot. A lot of these companies, despite all of the operational improvements, the hash rate improvements, the efficiency improvements, and the improvement in the price of Bitcoin, you said just in a single month, Anthony, since November 5th, I flagged it on this chart. Since the election, Bitcoin up around 40%. So fundamentally, these companies are in such a better position. The share price is just not reflecting that. So for guys like you and I who are fundamental investors, this is a mismatch, and this is exactly the opportunity we want to take advantage of.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we talked yesterday about Marathon breaking 9 billion in market capitalization, but it's still, 30% away from its 52-week high. So what you've got to remember over these last 3 or 4 years, these companies have been diluting shares. So people, will think, when's my share price going to get back to the levels of 2021? That's going to be quite a challenge for some people. If they bought into Riot and Marathon when it's close to $80, that's got a considerable way to go. I talked about this months ago on the podcast. For Marathon at $80 a share, you're going to have a market capitalization of 25, 30 billion. That's what it needs to get to now. That tells you it's sold at 200% of stock since that date back in 2021. And people just think, oh, it'll naturally get to that. We've got to take that into account. Not every miner's used the ATM, but those that have used it have been successful. And if you look at the valuation of the North American public miners, you're getting close to 40 billion adding them all together. And that's probably about half of the valuation of MicroStrategy. So that just puts you into context, the sheer size of MicroStrategy now compared to where it was like 3 or 4 years ago.
Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now. Yes, it certainly does. And where this gets so exciting for me is if you look at the macro picture here, we've obviously got all these tailwinds. We just talked about the ETFs, the Michael Saylors, the election, the incoming administration. On a fundamental standpoint, from a hash rate perspective, which we'll come on to in a second, from a Bitcoin mining perspective, and from an efficiency perspective, these companies are in a great position. Keep in mind, the next halving is still 3 years away, so they're not going to have to deal with that big hurdle for quite some time. And on the technical side, we've got our technical analysis friends, at least on a medium to longer term, saying Bitcoin is poised for a big run. Now, pile on top of that the fact that Michael Saylor is buying Bitcoin aggressively. We just got an update on his green dots chart here, continuing to average up on his position, buying actually higher than he has in the past, along with the ETFs. So when you take all this into consideration, Anthony, the big dogs are buying, fundamental, technical, macro, everything's moving in the right direction. And that's exactly why we feel so confident continuing to put fresh capital to work in these companies. Now, speaking of buying, selling, trading, you mentioned some of your specific trades there, Anthony. We don't often disclose trades on the channel, but if people are looking to take advantage of that kind of information or maybe a little more detailed reporting or analysis. We do both have Patreon accounts where we post all of our buys, sells, and portfolio mixes. So I'll bring yours up on the screen. You can quickly maybe tell people what that offers, Anthony, and what they could expect in that group.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of posts since I started this year. I think there's over 200 posts on the actual Patreon channel. All the podcast videos go on there. All the interviews go on there. All my purchases of mining stocks, my sells of mining stocks go on there. I also do like a weekly portfolio position as well to let people know the position there. And I also, for the investor tier, I also give a little bit more analysis on some of the news updates and how I see those playing out and what's making me move to certain stocks. So this week I talked about some of those purchases I've already talked about and why I made those purchases and what's my expectation from those. But yeah, no, it's a great community yeah.
No, I wanted to throw that in. We've had a lot of new viewers, a lot of comments saying, what are your top three positions? What's your price target on so and so? So, for anyone looking for that level of detail, again, Patreon's the place to do that. Another few housekeeping updates, Anthony, on the website. So, we now have all of our miner monthly data live feeding in there. So, starting December, as these companies report their operational updates for November, those are going to be fed in on a daily basis. So, you won't have to wait until the full group has reported. We've also gone in and updated the interview portion of the website. So you can now see 16 unique interviews with the most recent version from each one of the companies we represent on the website. And if you go over to their individual miner page, you can actually see a history of all of the interviews for that specific company. So great if you're doing some additional due diligence. We've got our calendar on there and continuing to upgrade that website based on the feedback we're hearing directly from the subscribers. So with that being said, moving into the news portion of today's presentation, maybe start off with Bitdeer. We just had them on the program talking about the Seal Miner roadmap, talking about the A2 rollout. A big press release today talking about that same thing, Anthony, as they continue to push the efficiency envelope.
No, absolutely. I mean, we had Jeff Labage on the show last week. So, and we talked about their strategy in terms of HPC, and they set off with this project in Singapore, a small scale HPC project, and we're seeing a lot of miners follow that type of strategy. Learn from a small project, get that to a position where you can then scale up. And it looks like now Bitdeer in a position to scale up, and they've announced some key updates today with regards to their GPU infrastructure, and what that means is they're starting to expand into some key locations. We already know from Singapore and Malaysia they're doing their smaller project there, but they're now looking at the USA, Iceland, and Amsterdam. And so nice to see Europe mentioned in the conversations once again. And having this sort of like global reach will ensure the high performance computing will operate no matter where your team operates. So it's another good update from them. We know that they're obviously busy doing a number of streams of different work at the moment. They're obviously on. They've released 3 generations of their Seal miner this year. They're doing self mining. They're doing hosting, managed services. And HPC is just making them really diversified as a company. All we need to find out now is when they've taken on the sort of an energy company and they've covered the whole base then really. But another good update from Bitdeer. And we saw yesterday that the market price was one of the only green miners yesterday actually. So it's boding up well. They've took out a 360 million convertible, which we've highlighted in previous podcasts. That will give them again some capital to complete. They've got some big sites to complete in 2025, and it's not just the completion of those sites, it's then what you're going to fit in those sites in terms of either Bitcoin miners or GPUs for high performance computing. None of those come very cheap, so they're putting themselves in a nice position to have the necessary capital. And it's, as I say, it's a good update.
Yeah, totally agree there, Anthony. It's going to be interesting to see as you talk about these test or trial pods. We've heard from so many of the miners, these proof of concepts are just critical for HPC AI development because of the expense and because of the learning curve. Now we're moving into that next step where they can actually expand that trial. And as we see here, global reach and global impact for a lot of these expansions. Speaking of HPC expansion, we actually have Kent Draper, Chief Commercial Officer of IREN, on tomorrow as well. So IREN's coming out with Q1 earnings today. We'll have Kent on tomorrow, obviously talk about earnings and their HPC expansion strategy. So very topical. The other company looking to expand this morning is Cipher, picking up an additional 100 megawatts of capacity again in West Texas. So we continue to see this concentration of miners in West Texas. I've said this on many podcasts, Anthony. If heaven forbid there's ever a large natural disaster or something goes on there, it's going to be very, very impactful to the Bitcoin network. So that being said, Cipher has found another site. Let's hear the details.
Yeah, so they've announced the acquisition of the new site Stingray, which trying to compete with Bitdeer, I think, on the Seal Miner, coming up with some really catchy names. They've purchased the site initially for 4.1 million, but aside to that, there's a variable fee that they'll have to pay based on the usage of power over the first 5 years, and that's at $1.50 per megawatt hour. Based on the maximum payments, if they use it's 100 megawatt site, so if they use a 100 megawatt site over 5 years, that's going to add potentially another 6.6 million to the actual price, taking it to close to $10.7 million. But this is again, it's another strategic purchase by Cipher. We know that Tyler, he's happy with the deal. He's expressed his satisfaction with the addition, and it basically complements the other data centers scheduled to energize during 2025 and 2027. And this will expand their active portfolio and pipelines. So we're hearing all these miners use this word pipeline, means they've got access to power in the future. That takes them to 2.6 gigawatts over their 11 sites. So yeah, another strong update from Cipher. Just need to hear now from them the potential of a HPC customer or client, and that'll get the share price moving there. But if you look at Cipher where they are today, certainly in terms of market cap, over 2 billion. So they've had a good rally in recent months to get to that position there.
Yeah, they definitely have. Nice to see Cipher on the map here. Speaking of Cipher and IREN, actually, we just received swag orders for our Miner Madness competition from both of these companies. So I know fan favorites, a lot of people looking to get their hands on hats, t-shirts, sweaters, whatever the case is. So great to see the swag and pricing continuing to come in anticipation of this big event. Now, speaking of events, Anthony, great segue. We just booked our tickets to two Bitcoin mining conferences. One is going to be Mining Disrupt. It's taking place in Fort Lauderdale, March 24th to 27th. So we're both going to be speaking at this one. Luckily for us, we're actually helping Dennis Porter put together some of the panels and organize some of the conference discussion events. So that's going to be a great one, Anthony. In addition to that, we noticed your picture just got put up on the Bitcoin Las Vegas website as a speaker as well. So I'm hoping to grab a moderation spot at that event. That's going to be the biggest one of the year. First Bitcoin conference with a pro Bitcoin government in place. So very exciting spring and summer. That's going to be in May, coming up for power mining and for the Bitcoin community.
Yeah, awesome. Looking forward to both of those. Everything's booked now, flights and accommodation. So all we need to do is pack our little suitcases, get ourselves over there, and start working.
Indeed, my suitcase is ready and waiting. Now, in closing here, Anthony, I just popped up the Bitcoin price now in the $92,000 range. So just in the span of this podcast, losing about $1,500 US. That being said, if you liked Bitcoin at 93.5 30 minutes ago, you should love it at 92,000 right now. Same message as in our intro. Great opportunity to buy. Don't worry about the long term here, you guys. There's so many macro catalysts on the horizon. Take advantage of these opportunities, top up your positions. And with that being said, let us know in the comment section below. Are you buying? Are you selling? Are you holding? And what is your strategy during this period of volatility? Thanks for watching. Smash the like button. Feel free to subscribe. We'll see you back here tomorrow for our IREN Q1 interview.